Week 5 is behind us, and best ball bros rejoice as their advance rates skyrocket with the ultimate Saquon Barkley floor week. This is Stat Chasing.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita hand job.
Fix your sight.
Jamar. Alpha play chase.
Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
It looks like we're finally Piss Boys. You're right.
Yeah, huge Saquon Barkley floor game.
We all got marked safe from Saquon Barkley in Week 5.
Yeah, we also got marked safe from Alvin Kamara in Week 5 as well. That was because I absolutely jammed him on the showdown slate. I had something like 42% Alvin Kamara captain, so he was destined to dud there. So you're all welcome for my sacrifice.
Yeah, much appreciated. I'll be honest. I feel a lot more comfy about my Kamara fade than I do Saquon.
Yeah. As far as like in this specific outcome, what's going to hurt me the most this year, I'm not super worried about the Kamara fade right now. Definitely concerned about the Saquon fade, but I think my best ball teams have signs of life right now, so that's encouraging. I mean, we had the Rashee Rice funeral last week, but now we've officially got confirmation. Rashee is out for the rest of the season. We can just chalk that up to it's 2 seasons now between the injury, rehab, and then the inevitable suspension coming back next year. So
last nail is now in the coffin. He's not punching through. There will be no revival.
No, which is very unfortunate as a man who just watched, the rough equivalent of a Toyota Corolla of Rashee Rice teams get totaled. So the process was fantastic, though, Trico.
Yeah, we'll always have the process.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some charts.
So this is our quarterback chart, and we've got 3 different metrics here. So we've got expected fantasy points from passing, which is kind of like our metric for quarterback passing volume. We've got our adjusted yards per attempt, our metric for passing efficiency, and then the size of the bubble corresponds to rushing yards per game. So then we have we kind of have all 3 components of quarterback scoring captured through that.
Yeah, there were a couple guys that stood out to me. The first one, I think we just have to go over. 2 weeks ago, you started pounding the table for Burrow as a really strong regression candidate. And then last week specifically, we called out that the matchup was really good. He was in a strong position on the chart to be a candidate for positive regression. And I mean, all the stars were aligning. And that's not to say that we were the only ones on Joe Burrow. I'm pretty sure everyone and their mom was on Joe Burrow last week. But I do think it's important to kind of highlight the process and like how we got there so that we can systemically go through that and see if we're able to identify spots like that. Exactly.
So I went through my notes from last week, and the big things I had kind of noted was like, hey, his O-line is playing well. His ADOT is solid, but he's underperforming on touchdowns. Then we also kind of noted that Baltimore are like a big pass funnel. So like to me, tell me if you disagree, but to me those are all kind of like the big markers to look for, and we got all of them last week. It was you have to be blind to miss that, I think, is what you're getting at.
Yeah, if you had a checklist for things I'm looking for in my ideal quarterback matchups, all the boxes were checked last week for Joe Burrow. So, it was a smash spot. He was my highest owned quarterback in the Dog Bowl, and I played a ton of him in DFS too. Unfortunately,
I don't. The thing about repeating Joe Burrow, that's such a fantastic spot. The weeks where we get that are going to be few and far between.
Right. Yeah, it's not every week that the stars absolutely align for a quarterback. If you made me pick the guy, there's a couple spots this week that I think are like the best spots for quarterbacks on the main slate.
I have a choice as well, but I actually don't remember. No, I remember.
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I can go first. So it's like I said, there's not I don't think any of these guys are going to be perfect because Joe Burrow was perfect. I kind of like Stroud. I think he's been kind of like buried because of the Nico injury. But Diggs and Dell are still very, very, very good pass catchers. He's another one where his ADOT is good, his yards per attempt are good, but the TDs have just been a little bit low. I think he's basically been neutral on touchdowns. And like I know like that's like, oh well, his expected touchdowns are right in line. But it's fucking CJ Stroud. Like he should actually be efficient on touchdowns. So to me that's like kind of like a sneaky regression spot. I guess the reason it's not as good as Burrow, they did lose Nico. They're not quite as pass happy as the Bengals. Their O-line isn't as good. But they are it does look like they're playing a pass funnel in the Patriots, right?
And the Patriots did just lose. Gosh, I'm trying to remember which defensive back it was. The name is escaping me right now.
The guy who punched his girlfriend?
Yeah. Along with myriad other issues. But yeah, he was, I believe he was arrested. So he will not be playing this next week. Now, there's a couple things, because I've thought through this Texans and Patriots matchup quite a bit, because I don't know if you've heard, but Drake Maye is starting. So it is one of the lowest total games on the week. It may, in fact, be the lowest total game on the week. I think the over-under is like 38.5 the last I looked.
Wow.
Now hang on, though, because I'm here to – the total wasn't necessarily meant to be cold water on the matchup, because we had a spot earlier this year where we talked about, hey, this is a place where you can attack some input volatility, because – right, and I think this Patriots situation is really right for that opportunity.
We don't have data on what the Patriots
how are you going to model what the Patriots look like with Drake Maye at the helm, and especially their defense is worse than it has been these last couple weeks, just because they're missing pieces. You get Drake Maye, maybe they're willing to pass a tiny bit more with Drake Maye than Brissett. I mean, I don't think that'll be their game plan going in.
We saw Drake Maye in the preseason, and like he looked way better than Brissett. So, right. Like there will be positive improvement, I think.
Yeah, I think. But
you do honestly have the potential here for something that looks like the Jets game, the Patriots Jets game, where Houston is just like all over them, and the Patriots don't get anything going against what seems like a pretty good defense. But we have no idea how good sorry, I don't want to say we have no idea. We have a very imperfect idea of how good the Patriots offense will be with May.
Right, and I think that the path that you have there to this game going substantially over is you need the Texans to be able to put up points and push the Patriots and really, really force them to not be comfortable sitting back and running the ball. And you also could get there without the Patriots getting pushed quite as hard if May just goes out and immediately shows like really, really positive things passing the ball. You know, the Patriots coaches, I mean, the incentives here were really interesting to think through prior to them starting May, because I really think that if you think through this logically, Gerard Mayo was incentivized to start Jacoby Brissett as long as he felt he could, without starting Jacoby Brissett being something that was going to jeopardize his job, if that makes sense. Because the Jacoby Brissett games are basically like a wash. They're considering those like, well, we can just throw those out. Those say nothing about your ability to coach the team. The plan was never Jacoby Brissett, right?
You throw those results out, like you said.
Right. And so if you just assume that, hey, Gerard Mayo's job is safe through X number of games, assuming a win-loss record of whatever with Drake Maye, well, delaying when the clock starts on that is very much in his best. The guy's making six figures every additional game he coaches. Like, it is very much in his best interest to push the clock back as long as he can. But now that he has May starting, the incentive changes a little bit because the games need to be better now. Like, things have to improve now.
Right.
The clock is starting. And so I think he might, like, if May can go and show something, he might be willing to shift away from being quite so run heavy, provided that there's something there. So really interesting spot. You can get the Texans pass catchers way too cheap right now on dodgeball drafts. Yeah. Like Tank Dell, you can get at the 4-5 turn pretty consistently. And same with, so you can get a Dell Stroud stack at the 4-5 turn. Like, very.
I saw that Stroud was very cheap. I was checking the ADP on him, and I was like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. So I like that
whatsoever.
I like that spot for sure. I've been attacking it. The one that I had as someone that was a good spot to target, one of the 3 highest game totals on the week, I believe, is Jordan Love and the Packers against the Cardinals. So this one I think is interesting just because we had the really big Jordan Love game 2 weeks ago against the Vikings in a big trailing script where he just has to drop back and chuck it up and do the Brett Favre impression, right? Then this last game, he just doesn't get there because of a lot of Dontavion Wicks drops. A ton of meat got left on the bone. Granted, there were some uncatchable targets too, but it's like, I think that what we saw there was just like the variance going the other way for a guy who's leaning into a higher variance style. He's a deep passer. Like, Jordan Love is consistently attacking down the field. That's why he still has an adjusted yards per attempt as high as he does, even without connecting on a lot of those. So I think you're in a good spot for Love. He's also, like, if you look where he's at on the chart, he's in a similar place to where Joe Burrow was on the chart before he had his big explosion game. It's not quite as good a spot as, the Bengals
Right.
at the Ravens, but I do think it's a pretty good spot. And also, I think with Romeo Dobbs coming back, that only helps him. I don't think Dobbs, I think it'd be ridiculous to say that getting Dobbs back on the field is a net negative for the team. Like, I don't think that anyone really believes that. So I'm interested in Love here in a bounce back spot. And last week, you could barely ever get him very far past the 2-3 turn. You're taking him in the mid to early 3rd round of the dog bowl. Now you can consistently get him in the 4th round. You could probably push him to the 5th in some drafts too. But I think it's a pretty good spot.
I think the some of the differences between him and, like, I know we're comparing to perfection here, is I think the Cardinals are are kind of like a bit of a run funnel. The Packers have been pretty neutral on pass rate over expected, with Love so trying out those Malik Willis games, and so I think to get there you do need them to be pushed. You need the Packers to be pushed, unless you get crazy good efficiency. I think you need some combination of, like, I don't think the underlying volume in a neutral game script is necessarily going to be there, and almost hasn't been. But, like, Jordan Love he's like the archetype of player. I think what you're getting at is the archetype of player that you're always going to be interested in GPPs. You just, like, that. You've got a little bit of a tin pot to get there. I think it can certainly hit. And it sounds like that tin pot is, like, more than baked into cost. But I guess that's kind of the stuff I noticed.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Cardinals' pass defense numbers, and this is 1 week stale of data. This is just what Pat had put together in his walkthrough article over on Leg Up. But the Cardinals' pass defense is 29th in EPA per dropback, 32nd in dropback success percent. This is the one that actually stuck out to me when I was looking at this earlier. They're 31st in time to pressure, and that was one of the big things that Pat wrote up last week about the Rams being really slow to pressure and how that was a really good thing specifically for the matchup for Jordan Love. So I think it kind of sets up to be like, hey, this is like a pretty comparable, really poor pass defense to the Rams, and we just loved the spot for Love versus the Rams, and it just didn't, we didn't get the huge nuke, and so people are off of it now, and it's like you can go right back to the well. It's honest. I mean, like I'm looking through all these metrics, like Cardinals.
Well, teams just haven't. The thing is, teams have not been throwing it against them. They've been run heavy. I wonder how much that, like, my question is, how much of that is like, hey, they're running to set up the pass, or maybe they're just playing very run heavy teams.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the 49ers did absolutely carve them up through the air, though, and you got a little bit less Jordan Mason last week. So
they played the Bills. So that is a run-heavy team.
That's a team that they don't know what the pass is. They've forgotten.
You've got the Rams, where the Cardinals just beat the piss out of them. So, like, maybe you can throw that out. You've got the Lions.
They do enjoy running the ball.
Right. Then you've got the Commanders, who put 42 up on them.
Yeah.
I mean, the 49ers, they got 23... points against them, and actually the 49ers and the Commanders, they were slightly pass rate over expected positive, and so maybe some of those numbers that I was citing are just from playing the Lions, and who was that first team?
The Bills too.
The Bills, so yeah, maybe I'm off there, I still think they don't profile as a team that throws super heavy, but like I'm caveating that with like Jordan Love is always going to be a good for the rest of his healthy career is always going, when he's cheap, will always be a good GPP play, like he just will be.
Yeah, I think you're just really hoping that the game, if the game goes off, all the ingredients are there.
Right.
But we definitely can see, you can see how it doesn't get there through James Conner, just chewing up clock and the Cardinals being happy to do that. So moving on to other quarterbacks here on the chart. This was, okay, so these are two where they're not super sexy. Neither of them have had massive games recently. One of them was actually in a pretty big shootout recently, and his numbers got a little inflated for that, and they still were just okay. But they're both right next to each other on the chart, and they play each other this week, and that's Jared Goff and Dak Prescott. This one's really interesting to me. I mean, the Cowboys have been just absolutely atrocious on defense. They looked a little bit better against the Saints, but I think that might just be the Saints more
the Saints are
showing us who they are. Yeah. And so I think maybe people have too short of a memory on how bad the Cowboys defense is.
I actually mixed up. You say the Cowboys looked better against the Saints?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know why I said the Saints there, but I had the Saints in my mind from last night from watching that.
Oh, okay.
That's
but they did look better.
Yeah, they did look a little better. But sorry, the Steelers. Same run-heavy, boring-ass team.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think people might just be forgetting how bad the Cowboys' defense is after watching one game where they were okay.
My question, I think this is another one where you need the Cowboys to push the lines.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the Lions are going to be so happy to hand the ball off and just like pound it into the Cowboys. Like that's their ideal way for this game to go.
Yeah, if I had to rank the games as far as like which one is going to be more likely to have that big shootout potential, it'd definitely be Packers Cardinals much higher than this Cowboys Lions one. The reason I do like this Cowboys Lions one though is that when the Cowboys push the Lions have a good offense and they're willing to throw the ball when necessary. Right. So, I mean, it's definitely a spot where you need the Cowboys to be scoring points. So, to me, it probably reads like maybe you play it through Dak Prescott and have Lions bringbacks, because the Lions are probably it's just hard. Goff would need to really monopolize all the touchdowns to get there.
Right.
Because even if the Lions are losing, like they're still going to involve their backs. So
right.
I think it's probably a play it through Dak Prescott angle, but then like bring Lions bringbacks in a pretty heavy way if you're doing it. Because I think if Dak is getting there, the game is probably going off. So I don't think this is one where you want to just do like a Dak CD skinny stack. Like the Lions are not going without a fight on this one if the Cowboys make it competitive.
Right. I think on the other hand, we did just get a game where Dallas, I think this was against the Saints, where Dallas did get beaten up by the Saints, and then Dak Prescott got there in kind of garbage time.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, I guess that's just, you've got like the two ways for good outcomes for Dak, and it's just a lot thinner for Goff, right? Because even when the game goes well for Goff, that might not even be that great a thing.
If he plays well, his volume will be low.
Yeah, which is a problem. So yeah, I think I'd probably prefer Dak here, but I think it's an interesting spot.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I agree. The game of the week though is these two behemoth quarterbacks here in the top left-hand corner of the chart, Lamar Jackson and Jayden Daniels facing off. I mean, if there's any game that was going to challenge the Ravens and Bengals game for the most enjoyable game of the season to watch, this one seems like it could be pretty fun. I mean, both these guys have been ludicrously efficient. Like when you look at these adjusted yards per attempt, these guys have been incredible. And it's also showing up.
We already talked about last week what a good pass funnel the Ravens are.
Yeah. And the Commanders are definitely not they're not an imposing defense either. So yeah, you've got a really good situation here, and the tape lines up with what the numbers are saying too. Like when you watch both of these guys, it's very clear that they're very talented passers. Lamar is making these incredible out of the pocket, off platform. The throw where he leaves his feet and throws an absolute dot to Isaiah Likely. Like it's literally just all arm talent. Like Lamar Jackson is making throws that like. I mean, this is like vintage Aaron Rodgers type stuff, like, you know, the stuff that where people would just glaze Aaron Rodgers forever about what incredible arm talent. No one else in the league can make a throw. No one has an arm like this man. Like, okay, well, Lamar Jackson has that arm now, and I feel like it's going underappreciated. So I'm pretty into Lamar this week. My big problem is he goes really early in dog bowl drafts. He's like 4th or 5th pick overall. So it's kind of hard for me to want to play it through Lamar. Meanwhile, Jayden Daniels goes basically in the same spot on the board, but in the second round. So I kind of think like if you assume...
I just looked it up. Jayden Daniels is like pick 14 or 15.
Right.
So that's like 202, 203.
In the dog bowl though, he falls into the middle of the second round. The ADPs are all set by the 6-man drafts, and so it's just different in the 12-man drafts and how they shake out. But he'll usually go in the middle of the second round there, and so it's often lining up to where the Lamar drafter and the Daniels drafter are like. And so
where did Jayden Daniels go like last week? I think he was going earlier than that, right?
He was going early in the week. He was going like 2-3 turn. I want to say, and then by the end of the week with projections out and everything, he was going like closer to 1-2 turn. So yeah, a little earlier.
Because when I do want to note, I think I remember saying about Daniels that his like one of his issues is as a mobile quarterback, his time to throw is like high despite the kind of low ADOT. And that might be an issue against them. A really good Browns pass rush. So his time to throw for full season or for weeks 1 through 4 is like 3 seconds. It was just 2.3 against the Browns, and so like to me like the Browns kept him in check last week, and so keeping him in check is like 20 points.
Yeah, seems good.
So yeah, your ceiling there is really good.
Yeah, I definitely like it a lot. The like only the only caveat I have to just jamming 100% Jayden Daniels this week is that because of all the bye weeks, the slate gets pretty thin at the skill position players, like especially running back when you get later. And so if you're taking a quarterback in the first 2 rounds, you need to have some guys that you're comfortable scrolling down for to be able to make that work, I think.
That makes sense. And there's a bunch of guys that we talked about that we're interested in.
Yeah, we'll definitely hit on some later tonight as well. One other guy that I really like, and he's showing up in a pretty good spot on the chart, is Baker Mayfield, who's absolutely free in dog bowl drafts. You can get him 5th, 6th round every time, basically. Playing against the Saints indoors. I mean, the Saints just
and the Tampa Bay, they like to pass this year.
Yes, yeah, and
you're seeing his volume is good. He's playing well, concentrating the passing attack the way he is, and he's getting volume.
And their preferred way to do it is the death by 1,000 cuts ways. They're not doing as much.
Right,
deep
it's
stuff.
like 6 yard A dot.
Yeah, they're not. It's not as deep as Baker was throwing last year when it was literally just like, all right, it's Mike Evans, and we live and die by Mike Evans. Now it's been a little bit shorter in general, but I mean it's working pretty well. Baker's been really efficient, so I really like this spot. You just saw the Saints get destroyed by Juju Smith-Schuster from the slot. You know, like Juju Smith-Schuster and the ghost of Travis Kelce, who, you know, to his credit, went out there and put up a vintage Travis Kelce game. But man, I mean, if you pull off the nameplates and you show me Travis Kelce and Zach Ertz, you know, side by side, it's a little hard to distinguish physically what's going on, you know.
yeah, Kelce has unfortunately given us a prime Zach Ertz season.
Yeah, but he knows where to be. He knows where to find the soft spots in the zone and sit down, and there's no one else on that offense, so he's going to be effective. But back to Baker. So you get this defense that just got absolutely torched by little to no talent from the pass catchers on the Chiefs. And Baker's been very good, and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin have been very good. I mean, this is like an all systems go spot for me. Like, I'm good with Baker doubles. If you told me that you could get a Baker triple where you got, you know, Mike Evans 2nd round, Chris Godwin 3rd round, someone else 4th round, Baker Mayfield 5th round, K. Dot in 6th round, I'm into it. I think that's pretty good. I think they're going to score enough points, and you're getting them all cheap enough that you're basically just saying, like, if I hit on the 1st round player that is a, you know, week winner, then I'm doing pretty good, and the rest of the guys are just going to score enough to get me up to the top.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's tough to say Baker Mayfield in like a GPP, but like he's a good play. He's going to be a good solid play all year, and this is a good spot for him.
If I was going to pour cold water on this spot, it would be that the Saints aren't functional on offense without Derek Carr. Not that they looked particularly functional last night. I mean, the only thing that's been functioning for the Saints is Rashid Shaheed, who we'll definitely talk about later. But
I mean, I honestly wonder though with I think Tampa Bay are like a team that does not need to be pushed. They're perfectly happy to throw the ball all over you. And so if you're just giving them possession after possession, that could end up being a lot of points. Now, maybe they get pulled in the 4th quarter, but that just means they've scored a lot of points to that point.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's only one other guy I wanted to talk about here, and it's really just a very mild, like the most mild victory lap you can take, but it's Bo Nix, because from week 1, we talked about that week 5 was going to be a good spot for Bo Nix. And while the stat line might not be terribly impressive, 200 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown, if that had happened in a week where we didn't get these absolutely nuclear quarterback games from Lamar and Burrow, I think you probably could have gotten there with the Bo Nix team. Now, granted, you couldn't really play it with any of his weapons.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about Nix. It's like, if you play him, you have to play him as like, you play him naked as a way to unlock a really expensive pass thing, or on those DraftKings slates where it's really heavy priced, it's really hard to play the plays you want to play. You have to find savings somewhere. I think that's the kind of week that you win with Bo Nix.
Yeah, and I mean, really, my actionable takeaway from this is just proof of concept that Bo Nix could technically score enough fantasy points to be relevant. And like, although Cortland Sutton did not get anywhere close to any fantasy points this week, his role in previous weeks has been really good. Basically, if you're just being a box score scout and you look at the box scores, pretty much every week is like, wow, if Cortland Sutton had a touchdown this week, he would have had a pretty good week. And so the way that I'm looking at this is, okay, I think there are situations where it might work. Like this could be a break glass in case of emergency play. And so where I'm looking at it, again, the next stop on the Bo Nix Express, I think for me is going to be week 8 when they play Carolina, who has been a really fun defense to target.
Yeah. For sure. Like, especially with the Bears tearing them up on the ground.
Yeah.
Like that, like, seems good. Seems attractive. We got a question here. Isn't May / plus Polk a better play than Nix at the same cost?
I mean,
what's that?
I wouldn't play Nix this week. I don't even think Nix is on the slate this week. But yeah,
well, I wanted to kind of like circle back that we did talk about May being like playable. It's something that you could do with the input volatility at the very start of the show.
Yeah. Yeah. Is he even on the slate this week?
So while you're looking that up, one other note I had was about Kirk Cousins, where it does feel a little bit like you're getting the play out here where they're letting him be like, they're giving him the keys to the offense, where I know they were trailing last week, so they had to pass a lot, but they were even pass rate, there was pass rate over expected was positive even then, so they passed even more than they had to, and then you get the good result. So I think the thing about Kirk Cousins is you're never going to get any rushing. You're just not going to get any rushing. It's all going to be from pocket passer stuff. So you need that passing volume to get there, and like you don't want to chase like a high passing volume, high efficiency week from pure pocket passer, but he feels pretty solid as a play for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and he's in an interesting spot this week. He gets the Panthers, who have been, again, a really, really fun defense to target. He's a little priced up this week in dog bowl drafts. I feel
he's
like
going ahead of Kyler Murray, CJ Stroud.
Yeah,
which doesn't seem appropriate.
Drake London is like a back of the first round pick, and Darnell Mooney, who has like damn near the same target share as him, and like I get it that if you maybe pick in a vacuum, I'll take Drake London over Darnell Mooney. But when I have to choose Drake London in the mid first round, or I can take Darnell Mooney in the 4th round, like I'm just gonna take Darnell Mooney. Like, as disgusting as that is to say, like never thought that we would have an outcome where that was something that I would say out loud. But
I don't think it's a play this week, but it's just like, I think what we got there is pretty legit. It's like it's gonna be a volatile spot week to week given his profile, but like you're clearly getting vintage Kirk Cousins right now, and the team believes in that.
Yeah. Those are all the quarterbacks I had notes on. Was there anyone you wanted to talk about, or should we move on to the running backs?
No, I think we covered it. Yeah, we covered it. Most comprehensive quarterback review show of the week for sure. So this is our running back snaps and usage chart, and the green bar corresponds to rush attempts, the yellow bar corresponds to routes. With rare exceptions, most running back targets are just from running a route. The plan is usually not to target the running back, but the play broke down and they happen to be the check down. So that's why we track that as kind of like an underlying usage. Then we also like to see who's trusted as a pass blocker. And then just to round things out, we also look at run block. We don't focus on it at all, but it helps us give the full picture of their snap count.
Yeah, the first guy, I mean, I think we have to talk about him. He's put up 2 really good weeks in a row after, I mean, I think I said that he was cuttable in like week 3 or something. That's DeAndre Swift. He's kind of risen from the dead here. The Bears'
and what's
offense.
funny about Swift is he actually last week he ran bad on touchdowns.
Yeah, he did. He got vultured twice by Roschon Johnson. So
he was like -9 on fantasy points. So he was like -1.5 touchdowns under expected.
Yeah.
So like, he actually got goal line carries. He just didn't convert. And I guess that's kind of nuanced because you would expect him to convert those some of the time and some of those, but then when you're missing it and the other guy gets it, you do start to get concerned that maybe they start giving it to the other guy more.
Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on Swift going forward? Because I think it's difficult. I mean, for me, like in a redraft home league, this is like a sell high spot for me. Like I'm trying to trade him away, but I'm curious on your thoughts. Is this something where you're kind of buying this as the new normal?
I think that's a right framing, where I think that Swift, like it's like we said last week. This is kind of who Swift is. Like he's gonna be somebody where you do get like world beating plays where he just looks incredible. He's making guys miss. He's taking like deep touch. He's getting deep rushes, and then you're gonna get plays where he just looks like absolute dog shit. And we've gotten 2 weeks now where he's actually looked pretty good, but I still would expect that you're gonna get weeks where he doesn't look great, and like his kind of profile is also to not convert rushing touchdowns or goal line touches, and so it kind of would make sense if he was to lose those, but I still think our projection should be that you will get good Swift weeks going forward. You just won't know when they come.
Well, this week he does travel to London to take on the Jaguars. So, what do you think about that spot?
Well, the Jaguars are just an awful defense.
Yes.
And so, like, if a team has good run fits, it's going to like give him trouble. The Jaguars will not have good run fits, and so like he might actually look really good this week again. Like, he probably will.
Yeah. I hate to say it, but I think he's probably a pretty good play this week. The nice thing is he is not on the main slate.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like a prime time kind of.
Yeah, I did get. I think I mostly faded him in primetime Palooza. I got some, but I think I'm underweight on him.
Okay.
Another running back that is actually in that same game that I wanted to talk about. It's 2 running backs. It's Travis Etienne, and then of course we can't talk about Travis Etienne without talking about Tank Bigsby. Etienne's role through the season so far still looks pretty solid. He's right there with J.K. Dobbins, Josh Jacobs. He's getting a decent amount of the work. This last game, Etienne got out-carried by Bigsby. Now there was a shoulder injury that he's dealing with that the team reported, and so that could have something to do with him losing more work to Bigsby. But Bigsby also looked pretty good. He's, significant rush yards over expectation, like big breakaway runs. So it's hard to deny Bigsby, but I feel like a lot of people are suffering from vividness bias with this, where it's like, oh my gosh, Tank Bigsby's the one that looks good right now. He's done it more recently. Travis Etienne, that bum, he hasn't scored a bunch of fantasy points this season yet. And I kind of think that people are just forgetting, like, we've got a decent amount of sample that Travis Etienne's a pretty explosive rusher.
So I think if you taught with high confidence that the touch split and the snap split from week 5 would just project all the way through, you wouldn't want to play any of these guys. It's a pure three-headed committee. The nice thing about Travis Etienne is that he actually does have a lock on the receiving work, so he does have that receiving floor. And if you buy the injury explanation, and then it becomes closer to a 50-50 or 60-40 in his favor on the rush split, then underlying usage goes back to pretty strong for Etienne. And for Bigsby, you have to believe that, oh, he looked great, and therefore, like, he's going to get all these extra different outlooks or outlets to play, which I feel like maybe the fact that he got so little of the receiving stuff, with an injury to Etienne, he's probably pretty capped from a full season long perspective. Maybe Etienne can go back to being like the usage that he got, but it is tricky. Like I said, I think if that touch split committed, then you wouldn't play any of them in a GPP. Like, Etienne would be just about startable in like redraft.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's two things that I want to talk through. Number one is the passing role for Etienne versus the passing role for Bigsby. I know that we haven't seen Bigsby be used really at all as a passer during his time in the league. I'm wondering if we just kind of throw out his rookie season, because he was atrocious. Like, the reason why I did not draft any Tank Bigsby is because if you play this game for long enough and you draft guys like Tank Bigsby after their rookie year, you're going to lose a lot of money drafting players like Tank Bigsby after the rookie year that he had, right? So I don't really think it's
when they get that usage at the gate and they stink, that's bad.
Yeah, I don't really think it's the kind of thing that you chase. It's the cost of doing business. It's like, good process tells you don't draft the really shit players when they're given opportunity as a rookie and they do nothing with it. But when he comes in his second year, the coaching staff's been really vocal about wanting to involve him more. He's getting the work. He's producing with it. I'm more inclined to just throw out the whole rookie season then and say, all right, we're La Tabla Rasa. We're starting brand new here. And so I don't necessarily know that Etienne is a lock on the receiving work, because Bigsby did catch passes in college. It's not like it was something he was totally incapable of doing. So
yeah, you're right. And he actually, he was a pretty solid receiver back in college.
So that's one where I'm like, if I want to think through the bull case for Bigsby, it's just that the rookie season was just the weirdest aberration of all time, and he just kind of morphs into the lead back in this backfield, and Etienne's more of like, he spells him. To be clear, I don't really think that's the most likely outcome, but I think it's...
And I think the reason I sort of suggested it's unlikely is because if Etienne is injured and he still has this lock on receiving work, then that's not great for Bigsby. Like, even when he's looking good, when they're trying to showcase him more, and he's still not touching that, like, that's something that would have to evolve pretty dramatically from here going forward. And what you're saying is, hey, that can happen. Like, he was a good receiving back. That can happen, I think, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but your point about the injury actually dovetails with my second point, which is this is extremely small. We're trying to parse the way that the humans on the Jaguars coaching staff think through and handle workload in the face of injury for their running backs. So we're not going with a ton of data here. We're really working off small stuff. But I got tricked earlier by this coaching staff with how they handled an injury to Bigsby earlier this season, where Bigsby got injured, and it was actually his shoulder as well. So both these guys have had these shoulder injuries this season. Bigsby gets injured, I believe it's in week 2, injures his shoulder, doesn't see the field on offense for the rest of the game. However, continues to play special teams. I read that coming out of week 2 as injury didn't actually mean anything in this game. Yes, he left the game with a shoulder injury, but if the injury was that serious, you don't put the guy back out on the field for special team snaps. Like, you got someone else that can do special team, But that was not so. Week 3, I assumed like, all right, it might just be they're done with Bigsby, they're tired of it. Dearness Johnson's coming back to take the job like he did last year, and so I thought week 3 we might see Dearness Johnson usurp Bigsby in the running back hierarchy. There wasn't the case. The Jags coaching staff really did just, I can't explain why, but they had more information about the situation than I did, but they decided we certainly cannot put this guy on the field for another snap in the game in week 2. And he injured his shoulder early. It wasn't like, oh, he injured it in the 3rd quarter and then didn't see any more snaps. He saw 0 offensive snaps after the shoulder injury, saw, a handful of, there were only a handful of special team snaps to be had. He saw them, though, in the second half of that game. So then you get this same kind of similar treatment with the Etienne injury where, and Etienne is obviously not a special teams player, but they're like, all right, we still need you to do this role. We need you to do the pass catching stuff because like that's actually what you're not as replaceable here. But in the running game, we view you as more replaceable here. We're going to go ahead and let Bigsby do more of that this game. That's kind of the way that I'm reading it here. I think a lot of it has to do with the injury. And I just want to try and take what I've learned from how this coaching staff has treated a similar but not identical situation earlier this season. And I want to try and apply that context to this situation. So seems like a really good sell high spot for Tank Bigsby. If you're in a home league and you have him, like this is a smash sell spot for Bigsby. And then,
I think so.
What you're saying is it's not really like, how are you gonna play either of these guys in a GPP going forward? Like the requisite ceiling is just like, it's really hard. We just got the ceiling outcome for Bigsby, and it was a great game, but that's the ceiling. It was
right.
20 some odd low 20s fantasy points. Like woohoo,
right. You get 13 carries, and like he gets 101 yards with them.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Moving on to another running back. We have a question in the chat that's also a note that I had here. Pollard looks like the smash of all smash spots this week versus the Colts. Is he a target for me? And is Spears viable in the dog bowl or too thin? Yeah, Pollard's definitely one that I'm interested in. When I set my rankings for the dog bowl prior to any public projection sources being out, I do have Pollard in a spot where I will definitely draft some of him. I haven't gotten a ton of him so far because I think kind of the market is frothy on Pollard too. People just want to attack this Colts spot. It's not a state secret or anything. So I just think it's like there's not as much meat on the bone as we want to be there because it's not sneaky, but I do think it's a good spot. And I do actually really like Spears. Not to blow my own stuff up, but I've been taking Spears in the last round, like with the last overall pick on some of these teams, just because running back gets really gross late. And I mean, yes, Pollard's favored in getting the workload, but it would not be out of the question for Tyjae Spears to score more fantasy points than Tony Pollard in a given week. Stranger things have happened. So I think it's a pretty good spot. What do you think about it, Draco?
Yeah, I agree. Particularly in the 4th game against the Dolphins, or week 4 game against the Dolphins, they were a lot closer in rush attempts than in prior weeks. So I guess early in the season, Pollard was the strongly preferred rusher, or that's how they deployed it. Some of the coach speak being that they kind of see it closer to 50-50 and then getting an outcome where it actually is 50-50. I think, I especially if you're getting if it's frothy prices on Pollard, then you probably do prefer to play that true Spears.
Spears is free. Pollard will be 100% drafted. Spears will go maybe 40% drafted unless projections really love him.
In a 10 running back week.
Right.
And with either of them, kind of what you're hoping for is a breakaway run.
Right. Yeah, and I think this is a pretty good spot to go after that. One thing I'm looking up right now is I want to see the the total number of rushing attempts in each of those weeks, because I kind of think that the way they might be divvying up the workload is, hey, when we're really just hammering it on the ground and establishing the run, we do want to take a little bit of the work off of Pollard's shoulders. And that's why they got it a little closer to 50-50, just because the rush volume.
Yeah, it was 22 attempts for Pollard, 15 for Spears.
Okay. And do you see how that compares to their other?
So yeah, week 1 was 16-4. Week 2 was 17-6, and then it was 6-2 in week 3.
Yeah, so definitely their highest volume week for sure. So
yeah, easily their highest volume week. But I do think they want to be. It does feel like they want to be closer to, maybe like a 60-40 than like.
Yeah, I mean, really, what that tells me though is that in the outcomes where you're getting the game to play out the way you want it, the Titans are rushing a bunch, right? They're productive on the ground. It's coming through. You're getting a lot of volume, and then it's coming more even on the back. So like
the increase actually goes to Spears. Most of the increase
Pollard,
in attempts goes to Spears.
Yeah, Pollard is much better in when both backs are going to hit a median outcome. Pollard's median is much higher than Spears.
Yeah.
But when you get a ceiling outcome here, I think their ceiling outcomes are probably a lot closer, and they're probably also not quite as negatively correlated as we might think, just because their ceilings are coming through substantially more volume. And then I haven't seen the reports on if Levis is going to play this week or not, but I mean, gosh, I would think that regardless of who's playing, like the reason Levis didn't come back in was certainly injury against the Dolphins, but you have to think that the coaching staff was kind of breathing a sigh. They weren't slow to make that switch to Mason Rudolph, right? They were like, oh, thank goodness, an opportunity to put someone other than Will Levis out there, because Will Levis has already done some stuff where Brian Callahan looks like he just wants to do the, Homer Simpson throttling Bart thing to him when he's leaving the field. So,
and the game plan for playing the Colts is pretty, like, the Packers laid that out pretty good.
Yeah, I really like this spot. The more that I think about it, I'm kind of into playing both. If you
right.
There's actually 2 spots this week where I'm like, I'll play both running backs from the same team, and it's the Lions and the Titans. I don't think anyone's going to do that, and I think it's pretty.
You mean both on the same team?
Yep.
Oh wow! And like, but it's a dog bowl on a 10 running back week.
Yeah, there's 5,000-ish total entries in the tournament. Like, it's not that massive of a field, Right. I definitely think, and based on just the game totals so far, like from what's out right now from Vegas, like there's 3 really good games, and then there's a lot of stuff that's just not quite as exciting. So it might just be a slate that's a little bit lower scoring, and really like, so the Lions one is harder the more that I think through it, because it's like for both the Lions backs to get there, just by the nature of the ADPs, you exclude yourself from some of the best game scripts. Like, you're not going to get Jayden Reed then. You're not going to get Lamar or Daniels. Maybe you can sneak in a Terry McLaurin or a Zay Flowers to get access to that game. Maybe you can sneak in a Marvin Harrison to get access. You could do like a Jalen Tolbert or a Jamison Williams. So, you've got the Lions to occupy the Cowboys game. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's probably a better idea for the Titans, just because Spears is free and Pollard is cheap enough that you're not paying. Right. The opportunity cost is much lower.
Right.
That
makes sense for sure.
Another guy who is in a pretty good workload situation that I think could be an interesting spot here is J.K. Dobbins. I'm really interested in your opinion on this one, because I couldn't decide if it was a really good play or just kind of stupid. So it's into the Broncos, who have a really good defense on paper. I went back and looked at the Broncos matchups. They've played a bunch of teams that can't really run the ball successfully. Like, the best running back they've faced was Breece Hall, but that was in that like super, monsoon game, and the Jets offense just looked absolutely terrible. Like, I mean, entirely ineffective. So the Broncos have not been tested.
They did embarrass the Tampa Bay Bucs. They absolutely embarrassed them.
They did, yeah. They stopped the worst running back in the NFL handily. Yeah.
And what's interesting about Tampa Bay though is they're if you look at their ESPN run block success rate, it's actually like really good. Like let me pull this up. Their run maybe really good is an overstatement. It's at 14 in the NFL, so it's like that's they're solid.
Yeah,
so it's not like they have like this cupcake, what you call it, O-line, and then the underlying metrics for the Denver Broncos, they're like 9th in the NFL for run stuff, right? So like, I think, like obviously they have beat up on like some of the worst offenses, but I think there's enough there that they're like probably pretty legit.
Yeah, no, I mean the most likely thing is the Broncos are a good defense, both against the pass and against the run. They're really good against the pass. Like I don't think it's disputable that they're good against the pass.
Right.
So I'm just wondering. I mean, the Chargers want to lean into the run. They're coming off the bye.
Well, the thing about the bye is, do you think there's any chance we get like a Vidal like rookie bye week bump?
Maybe, but I don't think it's. I mean, to me, that's like more along the lines of copium from nerdy fantasy football players than it is anything that Harbaugh is likely to actually. Harbaugh and Greg Roman are like, J.K. Dobbins is the fucking man. Like what they spent the bye week on was watching the J.K. Dobbins breakaway runs and like, how do we get more of this? Like, I don't know that they were. If anything, you're just going to get like, maybe you get Vidal coming in and taking a couple Gus Edwards touches instead. But I really don't think it's going to hurt Dobbins' workload at all.
You don't think it's going to eat into Dobbins? Yeah, that's pretty fair. That's pretty fair.
And so the warts on the frog here are you got Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, who are both listed as questionable when I checked. Now, it's early in the week, so this is just a situation I want to monitor. If both of those offensive linemen are healthy for the Chargers, this is a spot where I think I'm just going to say, you know what? J.K. Dobbins has shown us the explosive plays before, and sure, like the Broncos have looked pretty good against the run, but it's a spot where I'm interested in testing it on a weak running back slate where J.K. Dobbins goes undrafted. He gets drafted occasionally. But
like he's way underdrafted versus his usage metrics. That's what you're getting at, right?
Yes.
And it's like, do we really respect the Broncos defense that much that we're like, oh, this is unplayable?
Right.
It's not unplayable. It's certainly not unplayable.
So that's kind of how I'm thinking through it. Let's see. The other notes I had on running back. Okay, so the Rhamondre benching. I guess rumors of his demise have been greatly exaggerated because it was not really a benching. It was basically the exact same role that he had every other week.
The only thing for Rhamondre where Antonio Gibson had more routes than him. So like he is their rusher. He is their lead rusher, no doubt. But he went from like in the first couple of weeks, like Rhamondre had way more routes than Antonio Gibson, and then it started getting closer to even, and last week Gibson had more routes. Like I'll be interested to see if that continues, but that was the one kind of like usage note where, like if you're looking for Drake Maye to kind of unlock the offense, maybe Antonio Gibson gets more of the benefit of that. But they certainly I guess the other way to look at it is if Rhamondre is their preferred rusher and they start scoring touchdowns, he's probably going to get a good bunch of those. Yeah,
I think just we're going to talk about the Patriots a decent amount I'm sure, because Drake Maye is starting. But I think with the Patriots, the analysis really it should be something where we keep it pretty simple and broad and not try to get overly granular with this, because there's a lot of spots where, you get a systemic change in the offense and people are too quick to try and like zero in on this is the way it's going to go. And instead, I like to take a rising tide lifts all boats approach on stuff like that and say, hey, Drake Maye is in the offense. It's going to look functional. They're going to have the opportunity to score more points. And if we think about this probabilistically, every Patriots player has some probability of scoring a touchdown. And I'm just saying that all of those probabilities have increased a little bit because they're
that's pretty fair. And I guess my base kind of point is him losing the routes last week is a significant development, or potentially significant development. And if it continues, it does put a big cap on his upside the rest of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's see. I think the next guys I had notes on were on the backups chart. Was there anyone else you wanted to talk about on this chart before we move on?
No. I think we already talked about Gibbs and Montgomery. They're smashes.
Yeah.
So we can move to the next chart.
So this one, this one, Rico Dowdle is the one that I really wanted to highlight. You finally get the game where the Cowboys seemingly understood that Rico Dowdle is far and away our best rusher, which has always been clear. Now, there's an interesting thing. The Cowboys changed their run scheme this game, and it seemed to be a lot more successful. So I'm hopeful that they stick with that, and I think that could bode really well for Dowdle going forward. Now, they did lose Tyler Smith to injury in this game, and I haven't seen how serious that injury is, so that's a little bit concerning. But overall, I think it's hard to take away anything but really bullish sentiment for Dowdle after this game. I mean, if you were wanting to throw cold water on it, the cold water is that the Cowboys kind of suck. The offense looks much worse than it has in recent years. And so, the cold water is there's just not as many touchdowns for the running back there. So the role's less valuable. But I still think it's if you drafted Rico Dowdle in best ball and you're freaking out up to this week, I think you're breathing a huge sigh of relief, because if you get 3-4 games with this type of role from him, he's absolutely smashing his cost. And if the role like this continues for the rest of the season, you're absolutely cooking. And then you also have the outs to maybe the Cowboys get their shit together just like they did last season after their bye week and doing some self-scouting. So definitely encouraging there. Any thoughts on Dowdle and his role as the season progresses here?
So I guess it's important to note, so this is the 4th week in a row where he's led the Cowboys in carries. But this is the first week where he just completely clear and away obliterated the other guys. And so I think that the thing about if we had just 1 week where they gave him a lot of carries, it'd be harder to like put a lot of stock in it. But now that we have 4 weeks in a row, kind of in a row, and as they actually rushed more, it consolidated to Rico. So as the game plan became to run more, consolidated to him, that feels like pretty decently strong signal. And I mean, obviously with a running back, you'd like the Reds to come as well. Those are clearly still split kind of like 3 ways. But pretty positive development, and then games where the Cowboys do run a lot, it does seem like he's going to get the majority of those, which I think you hit the nail on the head. At the cost, you're pretty happy with that.
Yeah, the other good indicators there: Deuce Vaughn, healthy scratch. Cowboys are done. The Nepo baby Deuce Vaughn experiment, while fun, it was super fun to watch the Deuce Vaughn college highlights. It was very heartwarming to watch his dad get to draft him for the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah, the Nepo baby Deuce Vaughn stuff is over, unfortunately. Seems like a wonderful human. Unfortunately, got dealt a shitty genetic lottery card because he's really small.
Didn't we all? We all wish we had NFL level genetics.
That's true. So, yeah, Deuce healthy and active. What they really look like they're doing is exactly what they described in the offseason, where it's going to be running back by committee. They're going to use all these guys. Turpin's going to be involved back there, which he was. Zeke is going to be involved. Dowdle's going to be involved. Lipke's going to be involved. So all those guys are involved, but finally they're starting to be like, okay, no one else is actually all that productive. They did give CeeDee Lamb a carry out of the backfield, so I would expect stuff like that to continue. But I think it's consolidating enough on Dowdle that you're pretty happy with it.
Yeah, completely agree.
Is he playable in like the dog bowl format this week? Because I've been toying around with taking him, but I'm really not certain about it. He's relatively undrafted. You basically get him in the last round.
That feels like a step too far.
It's pretty thin, right?
It's pretty thin.
I
like what kind of scenarios do you see Rico Dowdle getting 20 carries?
Right. Yeah, I think it's pretty tough. I just think the ceiling games happen too infrequently, and I also think the ceiling's probably not that high. So it's like,
right.
Yeah,
probably
think
not.
Like
J.K. Dobbins is a better play.
Okay, that's actually really good insight. What about Tyjae Spears?
Yeah, I think he's a way better play.
Okay,
in my opinion.
Okay. All right, that's good insight there. All right, we talked about this last week. I just want to hit it again so listeners can avoid this and have this little bit of alpha. But when Joe Mixon is out, you do not play Cam Akers. Okay,
right.
Cam Akers,
even in your home leagues, don't play Cam Akers.
It's not Cam Akers. It's Dare Ogunbowale. Okay, Dare actually got more work than Cam Akers this week. He's getting the passing game stuff too. Listen, Cam Akers is a psyop. He's not real. He doesn't exist. He's just out there. They literally make fake stats up for Cam Akers. They put him in the box score. It's just like they do random number generator under 3 yards per carry. Here's the Cam Akers stats. Let's just throw those in there. So
here's a one for you. Dare Ogunbowale, I probably said that wrong, had more than twice the expected fantasy points as Cam Akers in week 5. He actually had 17 expected points in week 5 versus 8 for Cam Akers.
Man, Draco, sometimes we know ball and it just feels so fucking good. God, I mean, I'm more proud of the Dare Ogunbowale call last week than I am the Joe Burrow call. I feel like we nailed that one. And,
we did. Yeah, we definitely did. I wish I had money. I wish you had won a dog bowl seat, but we got the process win.
God, I know I told you this, but I'm just gonna you triggered me. I'm just gonna bitch on the airwaves here. Just needed one Tyrone Tracy touchdown, one Javonte Williams touchdown. Any of those, they both had multiple opportunities for that. Bo Nix vulturing it was, I guess, the most painful way for it to go for me, because I was talking about how Bo Nix might be a viable play in week 5, and then he vultures the touchdown that would have sent me to the dog bowl if Javonte just got it in. By the way, on the play where he does get that Bo Nix 1-yard rushing touchdown sneak, they were lining up, and it really looked like they were going to do a Javonte Williams run, and then the play gets blown dead. I can't remember if it was a timeout or a substitution or what, but then the next play is the Bo Nix sneak. So there's that. All right, back to actual stuff.
Back to actionable
is helpful. Yeah.
So
okay.
I know your note said about Roshan eating into Swift goal line touches. I think we touched on that where we did. We're on watch for that. We are on watch for that.
I wanted to talk about Chase Brown though. So Chase Brown finally getting more opportunities than, and we can actually go to the efficiency charts now for this.
Okay.
Chase Brown getting more opportunities than Zack Moss, You can see him. He's right on the line there, just barely breaking into the 10 to 15 expected fantasy point category. I don't believe Zack Moss is on this chart. Now, this is what is interesting to me. Zack Moss had been getting more opportunities than Brown. That's flipped. If you look at the size of their bubbles, too, Zack Moss has been less efficient than Chase Brown with those opportunities. If we really think this is a changing of the guard type situation, also you've got the Moss ankle injury too, where that could lead to more Chase Brown playing time. I mean, not to get too simplistic with it here, Drico, but what if I just simply transpose the location on the chart of Zack Moss and Chase Brown, but Chase Brown gets to keep his efficiency? I mean, that seems pretty good to me.
I think Chase Brown is the better rusher. The Bengals recognize that now. They gave Chase Brown and the majority of the rush attempts. I don't know how much the injury played into that, but it was trending to 50-50 anyway. Zack Moss is clearly the preferred, trusted passing down back. Like they actually ask him to pass block a decent amount. They do not ask Chase Brown to pass block. He runs routes, and like he gets touches that way, but they just don't ask that pass blocking of Chase Brown. So I think that gives some security to the Zack Moss kind of like passing down role, but I think he's pretty vulnerable on the rushing, and it's already sort of started to materialize where Chase Brown is getting more rush attempts now.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. So I think it's wheels all the way up for Chase Brown.
If you paid the cheap Chase Brown price in the offseason, you're really happy right now. If you paid premium Chase Brown price, I think you're okay, but you're not ecstatic.
Yeah. So one guy I'm trying to look up here, I'm trying to look up Kenneth Walker. How does Kenneth Walker have so many expected fantasy points here? What is going on?
That is a good question. Let me
hang on. Better question. Did you know there are 2 Kenneth Walker IIIs in the NFL?
I actually had no idea. That's very interesting.
Can you guess what team the other Kenneth Walker III plays for?
No.
PFF has him listed as a receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Today I learned.
Wow. And he's also Kenneth Walker III.
He's also Kenneth Walker III.
That's amazing. So the reason that Kenneth Walker has so many expected receiving points is because he missed a lot of games, and so then week 5 is weighted pretty heavily. And then week 5 he had 13.5. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, they trailed the Giants pretty much all game. So, I mean, in trailing game scripts, and I think Sharps missed time too. If Sharps hadn't missed time and you saw that kind of like, hey, they're trailing, and then Kenneth Walker is getting all this great receiving work, you'd be pretty ecstatic that he's kind of like game script proof. I think that's what the takeaway there is. What muddies the water a little bit is the Sharps injury. Yeah,
I mean, man, Kenneth Walker definitely looking like a pretty big smash here. I did not think this amount of receiving work was in his bag. So if this can, I mean, he's not going to get 8 targets every week, but if this can continue, even like 3 targets a week, 4 targets a week.
Yeah, he got 7 targets this week.
And I had him as 8 targets.
Oh, sorry. I counted receptions. Sorry.
Okay.
You're right.
But yeah, pretty incredible role. I have to be honest. So I was listening to the Stealing Bananas episode with Ben and Sean Siegel, and Sean has listed Kenneth Walker as his overall RB1 next year. They're talking about the early 2025 first and second round rankings, and I love listening to Sean's takes. Like I more often than not, I'm with him on stuff. But every once in a while, he says something where I like strongly disagree with it. I so strongly disagree with it, and I'm like, that is ridiculous. I'm throwing that one out. I don't even understand how he got there. And then, like, I was like, it was so overreactionary just off the huge, 3-touchdown game against Detroit. Like, that's not. It's just vividness bias. Then he goes out, and yes, there was the Sharps injury, but it's also like, I did not think that there was a situation where Kenneth Walker would ever get 8 targets in a game this season. So
he had 5 last week.
I know, but I just thought like that's a huge shootout against Detroit. Like they were just like that game was insane. Like the total play volume was crazy. Like I didn't think.
Right. You thought that was a high watermark.
Yeah, I literally thought that game against Detroit might not be his highest fantasy points for the season because he didn't actually have a ton of yards in the game. He just had a bunch of touchdowns. But man, Sean looking clairvoyant again with this Kenneth Walker RB1 early prediction. But that does transition me into my next point, which is I don't think we're going to get any legendary running backs this season. Do you think that's a reasonable assessment? No one hitting the 23 fantasy points.
Yeah. I think the RB1 season you got this year is probably not a legendary season.
Yeah. And I think we can move on to the next chart because there are a couple, or actually, let's stay on this one for 1 second. Sorry. But I wanted to highlight 2 of the guys that were probably 2 of the favorites to put up legendary seasons going into the year. And that's Bijan Robinson, who we can see. Now, are you ready to be depressed if you're a Bijan Robinson truther? In this 10 to 15 expected fantasy point band, you can see Bijan Robinson. He's right here, right behind Najee Harris, smack in the middle of the chart. Now, that could be okay. He was a little banged up. Algier got more opportunity than we might expect. Maybe over the rest of the season, he gets more opportunity. Bijan isn't even the best B Robinson on this chart. Brian Robinson has more expected fantasy points than Bijan Robinson. So little concerning, but I do like this week as a good get right spot for Bijan into the Panthers. To me, it's like a don't overthink it kind of spot. Like, here you go. Here's the matchup you dream of. I mean, you just saw the Falcons clear, for better or worse, the Falcons care about public perception of their players and how they're accumulating stats, which I know that we all hated Arthur Smith saying like stats are for losers. I don't care about stats. I don't want to be like the antithesis of like the Arthur Smith hater here. But I also think that teams saying like, oh yeah, you're right. Because everyone's upset about us not involving that guy. We're going to involve that guy. Like Kyle Pitts getting forced a bunch of targets where he looked okay, but like I'm pretty sure that if those targets had gone to Drake London or Darnell Mooney, like they were or Bijan Robinson, like they were better served. So, but the Falcons seem to care. Like the Falcons care about what Jason Kelsey is saying that, oh, you need to use Kyle Pitts. And then they come out and say, oh, don't worry. That's a good idea. We're going to do it. It feels weird to me that you're going to let public sentiment dictate the usage of your players, especially when it seems like Kyle Pitts might not be very good. But I think Bijan Robinson is very good, and I kind of think that this just might be a spot where they want to get him going. So, and it's
the only thing about Pitts. So he did only have 15% targets per run, like in getting involved. So I do wonder if like that was just a function of them passing more.
It happened early though in the game too. Like Pitts was schemed a couple things very early. I think he had 3 targets in the first, maybe not the first quarter, but like he had 3 targets almost immediately. And there was some schemed stuff there too. So anyway,
you noticed a concerted effort to get him involved.
Yeah, but let's move to the next chart here because. We talked about Bijan Robinson as one of the favorites to have a legendary season. The other guy we would have expected to be in contention for that is Breece Hall, who has just put up an absolute, this one. It's Breece Hall up there in the 15 to 20 expected fantasy point range, but terrible efficiency. I mean, him and Devon Etienne, two of the least efficient backs in the league.
Now that evil man, Robert Saleh, is gone.
God,
the sun will shine upon Breece Hall once more.
The Jets just seem like such a dumpster fire. I don't know. I do feel strongly that he's a very, very talented running back. I'm a little confused as to what we've seen these last few weeks. I think he hasn't forced any missed tackles in these past couple weeks. It was a good stat nugget that I heard. Just not looking great. I mean, the opportunities weren't incredible this last game, but I mean, and then you've got, you're 2 games removed from the really atrocious Broncos game. So I don't know. How worried are you about Breece Hall?
I'm honestly, I'm not that worried. I do feel like stuff like efficiency stats can like wax and wane over time. The big worry, I guess, would be like just true Jets systemic stuff.
That's my biggest concern, because I think Breece is good.
If the Jets like have an epic meltdown, then your ceiling case is just gone. I think you still have some floor where like a lot of the offense has to run through him anyway. So like you're not gonna get it's not gonna be abysmal, but your ceiling is just gone. If the Jets can kind of get it figured out, circle the wagons, like he's gonna get going. Like I'm not worried one way or another. Like even if he has a tough time in the Bucs, he will get targets. He's gonna have breakaway runs. I think you're gonna be okay. I agree with you that like the legendary season is kind of off the table now, but I still think you can get something like 16 to 17 points a game the rest of the way. I think that scenario is still like pretty plausible.
Yeah, I'm pretty worried about the Jets' systemic stuff, but who knows? Maybe the Robert Saleh. Apparently, Robert Saleh was really not liked by the players. Is some of the like early rumor mill stuff that I'm seeing.
Which player?
Mekhi Becton. Did you see the Mekhi Becton thing?
No.
He posted the RIP Bozo picture right after Robert Saleh got fired on his Twitter. Immediately deleted the tweet. But it got out there. Yeah, it got out there. So harsh criticism from Mekhi Becton on Robert Saleh. So who knows? Maybe the sentiment in the locker room changes. I don't know. I'm glad you're less worried. The Devon Etienne efficiency stuff also concerning, but I think I didn't go and actually do this because I kind of know what I would see if I did it, but really I think a big part of it has just been like, there hasn't been Tua in a bunch of their games that they've played now. They haven't had Mostert up until this week. And him just having to carry the full workload is probably not ideal for him, like having peak efficiency and being able to be maximally explosive. And I think if you just went in there and, fudge the numbers a little bit, what if you inserted 1 80-yard Devon Etienne breakaway rushing touchdown in his stats? What if you just pretended that had happened this year? Like, I'm pretty sure the efficiency numbers all of a sudden go back to pretty good, right? So it's like you said, the efficiency stuff can wax and wane. I'm not concerned about Etienne. I don't think that, you look like he did last season just by accident. So he's definitely one where down the stretch he could be interesting. Kareem Hunt looking like the waiver pickup of the year. Just very solid role, like in your home leagues or high stakes leagues. Like Kareem Hunt, absolute smash. He's basically getting the Pacheco role, like more or less,
So just I'm just looking up some of these advanced stats here. This does this does include week 5 actually. Does include week 5. Advanced stats per Rotoviz. Like 2 of the highest of the top 5 highest stuff rates. So Devon has been stuffed on 29% of his runs, hit at the line 52% of his runs. Breece Hall hit stuffed 28% and hit at the line 51%. Their evasion stuff is where is it? Devon Achan's evasion has been bad, and Breece Hall's evasion has been like actually solid. I think you can pretty easily tell yourself a story of how like the Dolphins turn that offense around with Tua being healthy. With Breece's stuff, like a lot of that still seems pretty solid. It's like a lot of the kind of like advanced metrics seem solid, but it that does feel like the offense is truly failing him. I don't know how that improves, but maybe they end up playing like weaker defenses, and you and the Jets kind of figured that out. Sorry to bring it back. Just some
I think that's useful context. I didn't really have any other running backs to touch on here. I feel like we got through most of them. Did you have anyone before we move on?
No. I think we're good to move on. So on to the tight end chart, and so tight end utilization and efficiency. So the green bar is what percentage of team dropbacks are they running a route. Then we also look at what percentage of those team dropbacks are they pass blocking. So we get that kind of full pass or dropback participation rate. And then we also look at ADOT. We look at targets per run. And one thing I wanted to note, I should have said this much earlier. I think we said it in last week. A lot of these charts are 4-week rolling. So I'll just point it out. The running back charts and the tight end chart are 4-week rolling. So it's week 2 through 5. I believe we did say that last week, but I should have said it sooner.
Yeah, good shout there. Because for these positions where utilization is really, really important for them, we want to be on top of the current trends, and we don't want to let what happened. Say we're in week 8, we don't want to let what happened in week 1 drive what we're thinking about a player all the way in week 8. Like, it's good context to have, but we don't want to miss out on emerging trends because we're keeping, week 1 in there when we just kind of need to file that away for context on the player's stats, but we want to be able to catch stuff as it emerges.
And so Travis Kelce, a good example here, where since week 4, so week 4 and 5, he's up to 90% route participation, 27% target per run versus 21 on the full season, and a 7.2 ADOT in the last 2 weeks. And so like that's the kind of stuff that we're trying to catch.
Yeah, Travis Kelce is back to Travis Kelce now after Rashee Rice went down. So the only solace you can take if you're a Rashee Rice drafter was that if you're drafting a lot of Travis Kelce as well, congratulations, your Travis Kelce shares are now saved because they certainly looked dead while Rice was out on the field. So one guy I wanted to point out here who's I would fully expect his TPRR to come down substantially is Dallas Goedert. You're getting right now. We've got 4 weeks in here where you are either missing AJ Brown or Devonta Smith in every week but one of these 4 weeks here, and then last week you're missing both of them, last week you're missing both of them, and then this week you get the bye. So I think that coming out of the bye. This week you're going to see a little bit less of Goddard and more of AJ Brown, more Devonta Smith. So I don't really think there's too much actionable here to do with it. Like if you have Dallas Goedert and he's your best tight end in a managed league, you're probably starting him. Like I don't think you can really get one over on your league mates if it's a league where you have trading and trade him. Like unless people are really not paying attention to the fact that the Eagles were missing weapons, like maybe you can just do like a desperation try and sell high thing for Dallas Goedert and get more than he's worth. But I think he'll still be fine the rest of the season too. I'm not saying he's dead now.
But he didn't suddenly become an elite tight end.
Right.
So one note I had here. So Trey McBride, his underlying metrics last week was awesome. So he actually had 17.5 expected fantasy points last week. He ran bad on touchdowns, so he didn't quite get there. But he had a 33% targets per run on a 6.6 ADOT, and obviously some good touchdown equity that he didn't capitalize on. But I feel like an elite tight end season for Trey McBride is pretty well intact.
Oh, I think we're currently watching it happen. This is
right.
Right.
Well, we haven't gotten the points yet, is what I'm saying. Even though we haven't gotten the points from Trey McBride, like the underlying metrics say that a smash Trey McBride game is going to happen, and we'll probably get a couple of them.
Well, and what people don't understand about the elite tight end stuff, the elite tight end does not mean this guy nukes every week. What it means is most guys suck every week, but this is one of the few guys that can legitimately nuke. And
right
now,
and then your floor games are still pretty good.
And your floor games are a lot better. Where when everyone else sucks and they're getting 2 to 4 fantasy points a week because they suck, Trey McBride is getting like 6 to 9 fantasy points per week when he has his floor game. And so you might not like it. This is what elite tight end looks like. If you didn't understand that when you're signing up for the elite tight ends, like I hate to break it to you now, but this is what it looks like. And it's part of the reason why it works. Like you're really hoping that this is the way that things play out, because in a best ball tournament where it literally is all going to come down to single weeks, when like this last week, Tucker Kraft and Brock Bowers were literal gods. Like if you didn't have Tucker Kraft or Brock Bowers in your tight end slot, I guess George Kittle also had the touchdown to like kind of keep him in there. But outside of those 3 guys, it's like, all right, well, there weren't really any tight end points to speak of this week. And so that's what the whole thing is about. It's like, there's not going to be very many good scores, but it's a lot easier to identify where the scores come from because these guys have these profiles that are just different. And like, it's not that hard to identify. Like, just look at this chart. The chart kind of tells you everything you need to know. Let's see. Travis Kelce, ton of routes, great route rate, 21% TPRR, pretty solid ADOT, 7.8. All right, next guy, Trey McBride, 26% TPRR, a lot of routes, 7.6 ADOT, looks pretty good. It's George.
It's kind of self-explanatory.
27%, 7.8 ADOT, looks pretty good. So one that we can throw out though, down here that is pure noise is Greg Dulcich. He had like an aberration game where he got something like 8 targets, I want to say, in week 2. This is just a feature of the rolling charts, and then I believe he also missed some games in there, or missed a game, I want to say. Anyway, yeah. Greg Dulcich stuff is fake. It was literally just all one weird game where he got a shitload of targets and then did nothing with them. So that's
right.
not.
And he probably ran routes in other games. But if he didn't get a target, he doesn't get picked up in the data. So that's a good. We should probably just remove Greg Dulcich next week, and that's a great call.
Yeah, but again, it's part of why, as much as we are spreadsheet virgins and we're like in the data, we always talk about like how critically important it is to provide context with the data and like pay attention to how these stats are being compiled, watch the games, understand what's happening, because it can give you quite a bit of context. And it's just so like one piece of context that I got from this week, and it's actually lining up with the stats, but it's contrary to what you're seeing in the box scores, is Dalton Kincaid. So with Khalil Shakir out, I mean, the Bills' already putrid passing game looked even more putrid, but not for lack of trying to get Dalton Kincaid going. They tried. He was pretty close to a really big play. Josh Allen actually missed him on a deep shot. It was just a badly thrown ball. But it is what it is. Dalton Kincaid, there is a universe where Josh Allen hits Dalton Kincaid and he has an absolutely monster game. He's the tight end 1 on the week. And if you've listened to this show for the last, year and change that we've been doing it, that I'm like captain of the Dalton Kincaid hater fan club. Like, I promise you, I'm telling the truth if I tell you that Dalton Kincaid looks like he's in a halfway decent spot. The only, the warts on the Dalton Kincaid frog are his route participation hasn't been fantastic this season. But to me, this reads like a situation of necessity. The Bills have nothing. They cannot pass the ball to save their lives. They also don't want to pass the ball, so the motivation part of it is troubling. But I think that they're going to lose enough games playing like they're playing. They're not playing great football. They were in the game against the Texans by the grace of God. If Nico Collins doesn't pull his hamstring on that play, I think the Texans just dog walk the Bills all day, because I don't think the Bills are all that good. They're just they're feisty. They're hanging in to games because they have Josh Allen, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and he can just do magic stuff. But the way they're running the offense is stupid, full stop. It's not the way that you win football games in the NFL in 2024. And so I think that eventually they will figure that out and by sheer necessity have to utilize Dalton Kincaid more. And we're getting enough of these peripherals that if the route rate goes up, I think Dalton Kincaid's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, so when they pass a lot, his route rate goes up a lot. So he was up to 78% in week 5. He actually had a 21% target per run, a 17 ADOT in week 5. And so if you change the projection so that they actually had a lot of dropbacks and Kincaid was participating in a lot of that, he would project for a decent amount of points. The problem is that you're getting double hit on the low dropback games where there's not as many and he's getting less of them.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. If you got a kind of situation change there where they actually did start tossing the ball more, it'd be like an asymmetric increase to his projection.
Yeah,
I think Tucker Kraft is kind of interesting too, because you kind of noted that he was one of the big scores on the week. I'm having a tough time seeing how to think about that, because I guess you are getting route participation, so he's at 80% last week, and then and I guess that's with the Musgrave injury too. You're getting targets per run. Over the full season, you're close to 20%, but then it's just a tree ADOT. So
I think
it's
my read on that is that's the role that he serves in the offense, kind of how
it is
for the Jazz.
It is
because
and the way he converts that into points is if he catches it short and then makes the big plays like he did. That's probably pretty swingy week to week.
Yeah, it's swingy week to week. I think it's pretty good in tight end premium formats though, because I think that you can end up with weeks where Tucker Kraft ends up earning enough of these little dinky targets where he's just going to PPR scam his way to a really good game. The other thing about Tucker Kraft, now when they drafted Musgrave and Kraft in the same draft class, both of these guys were really good athletes. So that was the appeal of both of them. And I remember being at least interested in Tucker Kraft last year just because of his athleticism. Now it seems like that's playing out where he's getting this big yak. I'm pretty sure the Packers really like him. They're using him over Musgrave. Granted, Musgrave was hurt this game, but we already saw Kraft's role emerging prior to the Musgrave injury.
Right.
And also Kraft had an uphill battle to get this role because Kraft tore his pec off the bone this offseason and missed a big chunk of camp, so it's, to me, it's he had every chance to, Musgrave had every chance to win the role and Kraft still ripped it away from him. So I kind of think they like Kraft a lot. And
I feel pretty secure about his role, given that he had it from the jump, especially coming off an injury.
The way the offense operates, just, hey, it's a very efficient offense that wants to pass the ball deep down the field, and then you have Kraft for these easier underneath things. Like, I kind of think that when you get into tougher matchups for the Packers, you're playing against stronger defenses. Like, those are probably going to be some of Tucker Kraft's best games, because if defenses are able to successfully take away all this deep stuff they want to do, then Tucker Kraft might just eat out a necessity for the Packers to keep moving the ball down the field. So I get that, we want to flag really low ADOTs like that and say, like, hey, maybe this is a concern. But at least for Tucker Kraft right now, like, I'm not overly concerned about it, but I need to see it play out a little bit more to see if it's something where it's like, oh yeah, actually that is a concern, because he does Kate Otten things most weeks,
Right. Like, I guess, Sam, so obviously I play a lot of FFPC, you played a lot of FFPC, so happy with that in tight end premium. But then in dog bowl stuff, after he puts a ginormous week, like, I don't think you can chase that in like half PPR, can you?
He's like, he goes probably like 4th round ish right now, like, 3-4 turn, I want to say, in the dog bowl currently. It's been hard for me to get him, just because a lot of people are taking him early. So you probably don't chase it. But I do, the tricky part is I like the game environment against the Cardinals as a spot. And now, as I think through this, what the sharp way is to play it is you just go back to Dontavion Wicks, or you go to Romeo Dobbs, because Jayden Reed's like, early 1st round pick. Wicks and Dobbs are both mostly undrafted. And it's the same thing that we talked about last week with Wicks. And, like, it can go to anyone here. It doesn't have to just be Reed. Like, we saw it go to Kraft last week. I think this is just a good enough offense where you can just take the contrarian play.
And I know the ADP is driven by 6 person drafts, but I'm looking at this ADP. So Tucker Kraft 29.3, but then you have Barrett 25.6. You have Laporte at 27.1, and it's like you're getting like a 2 or 3 pick discount on like way better plays.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even want to tell you how much Brock Bowers I have this week. I've been getting Brock Bowers at like pick 28, pick 30 in a couple drafts, and I've had to do
smash that.
Oh, I've had to do everything in my power to keep my pants on. It's been one of God's toughest tests for me. But yeah, man.
I need these other tight ends that you want to talk through. I feel like we hit on a lot of them.
I think we got most everyone here that we had notes on.
Okay. I think you had a note about Hunter Henry being kind of excited about how he might elevate with May. Yeah,
just, I mean, same thesis that we talked about with CJ Stroud, Drake Maye, and that game. There's a lot of input volatility here. It's the rising tide lifts all ships thing. If you're playing any kind of weekly format here, I think you just lean into this uncertainty and, you take Hunter Henry while he's free. Like, this might be the last week of free Hunter Henry that you get. What if Hunter Henry is Drake May's favorite target? What if Drake Maye is very good? What if Drake Maye is, a better quarterback than some of the other rookies that are,
Right.
I know this sounds a little ridiculous, but it's not unreasonable for Drake Maye to be just as good as Jayden Daniels. Like, there were teams that had Drake Maye over Jayden Daniels, In fact, a lot of the pre-draft stuff that I've heard come out was
it's in his range. You're not saying like we should expect this. But it's in his range.
It's something that could happen, and so it's just like, while people aren't willing to price that on a player or on a team,
right?
This is the game. This is the game,
right.
Guys. Like, we're trying to find these outlier outcomes, and when people don't make pay for the outlier outcome, you just take it.
Right.
You're going to lose money
in a GPP. When you get upside that cheap, that's how you play.
Yeah. By the way, 31% Brock Bowers so far for me.
That's a lot of Brock Bowers.
The field. No problem.
Oh, so Anybody here on the backup chart?
I mean, there's a guy on the starters chart that I didn't talk about that should be on the backup charts. And Noah Fant seems giga dead. You got guys like Farrell Brown and I can't even remember the other guy's name, but dude, the Seahawks using a 3 tight end rotation will just forever tilt me. It might just be that Noah Fant is not that good.
I was about to say, like, doesn't that kind of suggest that he's not that good?
Yes, it does.
he does have like a 72% route. He did have a 72% route run last week, on like what seemed like a high volume week for that team, but then an 8% targets per run.
Yeah, he's probably not very good, which is a bummer. Really liked him.
It's a bummer.
He's an athlete, but apparently not one that they want to give the ball to.
Right.
Juwan Johnson on the rise here. You get wait, Juwan Johnson make it onto the starters chart? Why?
He's right here.
Wow, show enough. So yeah, made it onto the starters chart. Also with this little rinky-dink ADOT. Here you go. You want like the most disgusting play of all time. You don't play any Saints this week against Tampa Bay because you're going to have either Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler, except for Juwan Johnson, the emergency outlet 2.9 ADOT guy. You play Juwan Johnson here. Now that's caveat with Taysom Hill inactive still with his broken ribs. But Juwan getting more routes, looking like he's getting worked in more fully. So he's
68% route run, 19% targets per run, just against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
For ADOT, all of that stuff is volatile, but good to see him kind of emerge. And if you think that they're gonna have to throw a lot to stay in the game, then Juwan is probably gonna play a lot.
Yes, that is what I think. Okay, sorry. Back to the backups chart. There's only one other guy we need to talk about on the backups chart, and it is the sneakiest of sneaky plays. Probably a play to lose all of your money. You'll get no fantasy points from this player, but if you want to feel really smart, you can play Ja'Tavion Sanders because Tommy Tremble got I watched Tommy Tremble's soul leave his body on the field. I really in all seriousness, hope Tommy Tremble is okay. That was a brutal hit that he took. I hope the guy who hit him is suspended for a game. That's just some fucked up stuff. As all or most football fans do, I certainly enjoy a nice big hit now and then, but I don't enjoy the hits where I'm watching a guy just get absolutely speared to the head, and I watch him get Alzheimer's 10 years sooner. So didn't love that, but Ja'Tavion Sanders maybe gets to start this week. Maybe a little interesting. We liked him a lot because he's a good athlete.
Well, he was 74% route run in week 5.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming a lot of that was a Tommy Tremble injury.
Correct. The Tommy Tremble injury came almost immediately.
Okay, so we already know. Maybe not know, but we kind of know that he has a full role.
Yeah, that was my point. That hey, the door opened and Ja'Tavion Sanders at least got to walk through the door. Now the other stuff that is interesting here is they played a really good defense in the Bears, so that the offense was kind of stymied. Deontay Johnson really didn't get anything going. Chuba Hubbard's the only one who put up even a usable fantasy week for the Panthers. So you get a much friendlier matchup against the Falcons here. I definitely think that this could be a spot where, you just get a little bit of a bounce back. And the other thing is the target competition outside of Deontay Johnson is non-existent because Xavier Legette is injured. Jonathan Mingo is I thought it was hard to find a receiver on the Panthers that was going to be worse than, who's their former LSU guy, whose name I'm forgetting right now? Terrace Marshall.
Yeah.
Thought it was going to be hard for them to find a guy worse than Terrace Marshall. Congratulations to the Panthers organization. Incredible front office. Found another guy even worse. And Mingo. Mingo is terrible. So Ja'Tavion Sanders might just be able to get there because there's no one to take the ball other than Deontay Johnson, and he's going to be entirely free. Probably not good in the dog bowl because like the minimum price.
Okay, so what you're saying is he's a desperation waiver wire pickup where like you lost a tight end or you have somebody on a bye week.
He'll probably, I haven't looked at the DraftKings pricing yet. I bet you he's 2,500 though. That's more where I would play him, just because like the last round cost of a tight end on Underdog is not the equivalent of a 2,500 salary. It's more like getting a $4,000 player. And so I think you just want to, if you choose to lose your hard-earned American dollars playing Jatavion Sanders this week, probably do it in the format where you get the largest benefit from it, which is where you'd save a ton of salary. Because he's not going to be owned anyway. No one will play. The only people playing Jatavion Sanders are the people stupid enough to listen to me. So, if you're watching this right now, it's going to be you and like maybe one other person playing Jatavion Sanders. So, anyway, that's all the Jatavion Sanders talk for this podcast.
Okay. I'm looking up his salary now. Looks like this week is 2,600.
Oh, 100 more than the Stone Men. I'll tell you what, I'll probably have at least one Jatavion Sanders team on DraftKings.
Makes sense.
You don't have to say it makes sense. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, we just pitched them. If we just gave a stump speech for him, I'd hope that you're also playing him. My last stat chasing co-host also had an issue about touting tight ends that he didn't play.
Oh, that's a good call. Good show.
Receiver opportunity versus fantasy points, and this is the starters chart. Do you want to kick us off? Oh, I can't hear you. Is something wrong?
Oh, sorry. I had my mic off there. Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yeah. Can hear you.
Jamar Chase is being sneaky and hiding up in the upper left-hand corner behind the route share legend. Now, this chart's interesting just because Malik Neighbors is skewing it so hard that the minimum x-axis value is 40% weighted targets per route run. So it looks Jamar Chase's weighted targets per route run kind of like artificially looks lower than it even is. Now, granted, T. Higgins got a lot of targets as well, so that's also part of it. But yeah, I mean, I would fully expect Jamar Chase to finish moving on over up into the upper right-hand quadrant to live with wide receivers in this court.
Chase had 29% targets per run, 68% weighted targets per run in week 5. I think we can pretty handily ascribe the low start to the year because of the holdout.
Yep.
And normal Jamar Chase underlying usage trends projection forward.
Yeah, agree. Okay, this is, if you want the flag plant of all flag plants here, the guy who is going to absolutely erupt this week is in a similar spot on the chart that Courtland Sutton was last week when I said maybe Courtland Sutton's like an okay play because he's getting a lot of weighted targets per route run. He's in a good spot. Terry McLaurin against the Ravens pass funnel defense with Jayden Daniels, who it's looking more and more with each passing game, it's looking like Cliff Kingsbury is rotating the horizontal raid 90 degrees and allowing them to do the vertical raid and just huck it deep to Terry McLaurin. I mean, listen, if you get just two.
Terry McLaurin had 176 air yards last
week. That's what I'm saying. You get two of those deep bombs to connect to Terry, and he keeps his feet through them because this last week he caught one and fell down short of the end zone. Like, I mean, I don't mean to sound hyperbolic here, but a Terry McLaurin 40 burger is squarely in the range. That's like I think that's like a 90. It's not even 99th percentile. That's like 98th percentile. Okay. But I think this is an insane spot for Terry McLaurin. He's going way too late. I'm ruining my ability to get Terry McLaurin right now in Dog Bowl. I only have 23% of him right now. I hope that before rankings come out, or projections come out, that I'm able to get to like 50% Terry McLaurin, because he'll be at the end of the first. Him and Jayden Daniels would be the 1-2 turn in Dog Bowls right now. So I managed to get a Terry McLaurin in the third. It was Terry McLaurin third round, Jayden Daniels second round team, which I am just over the moon about. I think if you can get a couple of those, you're going to have a really good shot at stealing a seat this week. So Terry McLaurin, that's my spot this week.
Makes sense.
So we talked about this briefly way back on the quarterbacks chart. We talked about Drake London and Darnell Mooney, with respect to Kirk Cousins in this good matchup against the Panthers. Drake London and Darnell Mooney are Spider-Man meeting each other on this chart here. Basically identical weighted targets per route run, just a couple fantasy points difference, which over the small sample that we have is pretty attributable to just a little bit of variance. I do think that, straight up, cost agnostic, I'd take Drake London over Darnell Mooney. However, in pretty much every fantasy format that we're playing, cost definitely matters, and you're getting Darnell Mooney a lot cheaper than Drake London. So I'm pretty into Darnell Mooney this week. Things you never thought that you would say.
Yeah, that's an odd one where he just had like a really, really like mediocre to like non like viable career, and now just an utter revival.
He had the one really good season, right? But
he had a solid like rookie year where he got like, or sophomore year where he just about got to 1,000 yards.
I thought he was over
like
1,000.
I thought it was like 1,040 or something like that.
Oh yeah, the semantics between like 1,000, 1,040 doesn't matter. Darnell Mooney, like I think we had all pretty much left for dead. But anyway, he seems to be experiencing a late career resurgence here with Kirk Cousins, and to me it's just kind of the thing where there's too much name value still being ascribed to Drake London. Not that Drake London isn't good. I think he's good. I just think that kind of if we go back in time and kind of look at this as the like when Kirk Cousins had Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson both doing like, I'm talking way back when Adam Thielen was really good. It's more like Adam Thielen, Steph Diggs, when it was like pretty concentrated offense, right? Like you can get both these guys. Now this is a little less concentrated, but I mean it's concentrated than that. But that was like one of the all-time concentrated offenses. Just think of Darnell Mooney, and they're totally different player archetypes. It's purely just like the role and the and like the cost relative to what you're getting for the targets. Like Darnell Mooney is just like that second piece in the Kirk Cousins offense that is going too cheaply. People will get there eventually. Like it's not. I mean, it might already be too late. Like people might already be onto the Darnell Mooney stuff, but from what I'm seeing in dog bowl prices, they're not. And so it's probably one of your last opportunities to take advantage of the Darnell Mooney to Drake London arbitrage opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's fair. Like not non-derogatory. It's pretty gross. I have a tough time seeing like how Darnell Mooney, like it's hard for me to actually envision him continuing to play well enough to like earn these targets over a full year. But like that's what he's doing. That's what he's doing, and the offenses that he's been playing on have been so rough that like it's also not that difficult to tell yourself a story of like him just being misused his entire career, and like we have seen veterans have career revivals with good quarterbacks, so like that's probably what's happening, and by the end of the year, it'll just be like accepted.
Yeah. Okay, this was one that I was interested in your thoughts on. So, Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown, pretty close on the chart for. Now, a lot of this is just Amon-Ra is going to dominate the raw targets more than Jameson. At least what we've seen so far this season is he's going to get way more raw targets. But Jameson is now he's not just getting deep stuff. Jameson's operating in all quadrants, but he is also getting stuff that's much deeper than Amon-Ra. So it's kind of buoying his weighted targets per route run a little higher just because he's getting that deeper stuff. But really my question for you is the emergence of Jameson Williams as like a legitimate viable weapon for the Lions now eating into these other Lions pass catchers like Amon-Ra, like Laporta, and is that causing them to be a little bit muted versions of what we'd seen from them last year?
I think you've kind of got two things going on where it does seem like they're running the ball more, and then so the receiving volume is down, and then he's taking a bigger chunk of it than before, so you're kind of getting a double blast there, which it does kind of suck that all those kind of expensive pieces are underwhelming. They're probably all still like great GPP plays. Like it's kind of like similar to how the San Francisco team has been, where like they run too much, they cannibalize each other, but then there's going to be games where one of those guys is just somebody you absolutely need.
Yeah, definitely.
The weak consistency isn't what it was before.
Something I think I might want to dig in. I've done this on past BBM data, but I think I have some ideas for how to kind of dive in to this problem in a deeper way. But doing kind of like a sensitivity analysis on the price of team stacks for some of these pretty expensive team stacks, like what you actually need from the pieces. Like, for example, if you team stack the Lions this year in best ball, took Amon-Ra in the first round, took Laporta in the fourth round, you can't take Gibbs and Amon-Ra, except for that brief stretch of time where Gibbs was falling with the hamstring injury. And then you get, Jameson in the seventh round. It's like, is that going to be good for best ball? Right now it's looking like David Montgomery, cost adjusted, David Montgomery and Jameson Williams were the way to play this in best ball drafts. But there's a long season, and I'm pretty optimistic in the Gibbs thesis playing out, where at the start of the season, I was like a little hesitant to believe it. I just thought that it was a little too wish-casty that like just going to usurp David Montgomery. He's going to take so much of it and dominate. And his passing role has been less. I think that's also just a side effect of Jameson, just eating into that passing volume. But man, Gibbs just looks so good, and they're willing to use him in situations that I think prior to the season starting, people would have ascribed to like purely David Montgomery situations, like, goal to go, short yardage goal line stuff. Like, they're happy with Gibbs there. So I think the path for Gibbs getting there is still alive, but with Amon-Ra and Jameson, it's probably a lot like the Niners, like you said. I think that's a really good comparison.
I know you had a note here about like a Brandon Ayuk revival.
Yeah, that was how I wanted to segue the Niners and Lions here. But man, I played a bunch of Ayuk last week. I thought it was a good spot. It's something where I just have to remind myself. I wish I remembered this prior to watching this week play out. But when a major projection provider is like so heavily over on one player in one of these like volatile good offenses relative to the other pieces, like ETR was so much higher on Deebo Samuel than the rest of the industry, and so much higher on Deebo Samuel than Brandon Ayuk, that even though their projection represents a range of outcomes, what we're telling you is the median projection, and here's the ceiling. So they're not necessarily wrong by projecting Debo that much higher, but the way that people are consuming the data that they're providing is wrong. People are seeing that and saying, oh my God, I gotta play Debo. Debo Samuel's the best projected player on the slate. And so then you get this weird overreaction where, you know, if you sat down and had a conversation with the ETR projection team, they'd probably tell you, yeah, all of these guys could go absolutely nuke this week. We just think Debo has the highest probability of doing it. But they fall victim to this, like, you know, snake eating its own tail thing where they told everyone Debo's the best bet. Therefore, everyone plays Debo and jacks the ownership way up, and it makes the other plays better. So it's just, to me, I just want to remind myself that when you get a spot like that where the market is going to be way too overconfident in how a really good offense is going to get there when there's a lot of very similar weapons. Like, we're not talking like Garrett Wilson versus Mike Williams was the projection gap, you know, where one of these is like clearly a different tier of player, is Debo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle, where all of
it's
these
like
guys,
1A, 1B, 1C.
Yeah. So I just, this is me saying it out loud to remind myself, and also to tell the listeners, like, when you see a spot like this where you get just such a huge projection on one player relative to players of a similar tier on their offense, like if you got a Mike Evans is projected for 20 and Chris Godwin is projected for 14 type of situation, you know, that's a spot where you just say, yeah, that the projection could even be right, but the field's going to overreact to that and not synthesize that data correctly. And so I'm just going to lean into people not understanding how probabilistic range of outcomes work.
And also not realizing that other people are also going to play that projection.
Yeah. And it's such a simple thing. So, like, I mean, the one that I really want to attack right now, and sorry, I'm just shooting from the hip here. I didn't have this one in the show notes, but I feel like everyone is so gung-ho about DJ Moore now. DJ Moore just had a really big week. Caleb Williams is looking good. Like, I feel like everywhere I look, I see all these people talking about how DJ Moore is the alpha in the offense. He's about to feast with Caleb Williams. And it's like, man, I kind of think that Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen both could probably get there in any given week. Like, maybe DJ Moore is the projection favorite, but I don't think it's quite as clear cut as people are thinking. Like, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze through the first 4 weeks had like identical targets in the games where they both played. So it's like, I kind of think that both of these guys are not identical in the same games, but they each had the same number of targets in different games. So I just kind of think they're both live to put up the same type of game we just saw from DJ Moore, and people are just overconfident because DJ Moore just had a really big game. So that's another one where I'm want to fade the overconfidence there. All right, we'll speed up here. I had a note. This is a really important one. But if you look in the bottom left-hand corner, right around 40% weighted targets per route run, little under 10 fantasy points per game. I'm just wondering, when is Jerry Jeudy supposed to bury me?
Yeah, he's not, is he?
No.
He buries you when Flames becomes a starter.
Yeah, if we get some Jameis, maybe Jerry Jeudy can bury me. But man,
I've seen. I haven't watched the Browns play, but I've seen some comments that what's his name, Deshaun Watson is having like the worst stretch of QB games, like are among the worst stretch of QB games, like in the modern kind of like.
So, some of the passes are just weird. Like, there's some where it looks like, oh, that's like a normal miss. That's like a miss that a normal quarterback would have. But every once in a while, there's one where it's like, what the fuck just happened? It doesn't like I don't see any other quarterbacks miss in that same way, if that makes sense. Like, I'm watching a guy where, like, if you want my theory on what's happening, like, biomechanically his body did not do what he expected it to do there. Like, the ball comes out like he thought his arm could continue moving, and it, like, his shoulder got caught or something. It's very weird. his body's not doing what he thinks is going to happen. So seems bad. All right, we'll speed up here. Let's move to the next chart unless you had anyone else on this to talk about. Okay, Brian Thomas breakout season. It's here. Despite poor quarterback play from Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas is inevitable. It turns out the guy who scored 1 million touchdowns, even though he was running opposite Malik Neighbors, target domination king, happens to be very good at football.
Yep.
I don't even have anything else to say.
No, I'm pretty tired.
You're good.
Yeah, he's playing well. He's and then hopefully his route share can kind of creep up.
I don't see how it doesn't. He's very Gabe Davis is like such a caricature next to Gabe Davis next to Brian Thomas looks like they literally signed Gabe Davis to make the Brian Thomas pick look that much better. Sorry, Gabe.
Yeah, he's still hanging around. He's been firmly in that around 80% range, but like they have to find a way to increase that.
He by the end of the season, he will absolutely be the alpha on the team. Okay, Josh Downs. Man, this was a really interesting one with Flacco. Flacco got out there and was just slinging it. Josh Downs absolutely looked like his favorite target. Looked like the best receiver on the team by my eye. I was watching a lot of this game because I had a ton of Colts and Jag stacks. Played a lot of Joe Flacco in the Dog Bowl and DFS. Would have been really good if we didn't have the nuclear Burrow week because Joe Flacco was kind of crazy. But anyway, Josh Downs, I think, is asserting his dominance as the wide receiver one on the team. Like he will be the one that leads the team in targets. But there's one small wrinkle to that analysis, and that is when Anthony Richardson comes back, I don't know how good that is for Josh Downs' game because it's just the amount of pass volume is gonna shrink. It transforms into this like deep ball, like low completion percentage type stuff. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on Josh Downs here going forward?
So Josh Downs, I guess one thing that's kind of standing out to me is so he's in this 70% route share, and then you look where his routes are, it's almost all from the slot. So it does seem like they see him as a kind of exclusively a slot receiver. But then when he plays, he's getting like, if I just do a pure average here, he's getting like 35% targets per run. So absolutely overcoming the lack of route share there. And then, so last week he got 12 targets, 6.8 yards, ADOT. Some of that probably was Joe Flacco. But I think you're right. It's not like he's getting these crazy deep balls. You kind of it kind of that style of player kind of doesn't really work when Anthony Richardson is a quarterback, or Anthony Richardson needs to play a whole lot better.
Yeah, that's my assessment too. Exciting because I really like Josh Downs. He's a really good player. Drafted a bunch of him. Would love to play him in weekly formats. I just don't think that I will with Anthony Richardson. I think, certainly off of a good week, his price will be too high. His ownership will probably be, I would assume that his ownership is not high this week because I think it's not a state secret that his game probably doesn't mesh the best with Anthony Richardson. But yeah. Okay, so I've got, so look where Deontay Johnson is on this chart. Like pretty incredible, 70% weighted targets per route run, averaging a strong, 12.5-ish fantasy points per game. Pretty solid role here, right?
Yeah.
Right below him is Ladd McConkey, rookie wide receiver for the Chargers, like very quietly becoming the wide receiver one on the team. Now, the problem with Ladd McConkey, and making a 1-to-1, like, hey, he and Deontay Johnson are right next to each other on the chart comparison, you can actually see it. The example right beneath him is George Pickens. The problem is the pass volume, right? Like you're just the volume for the Chargers pass offense is going to be pretty low. just because they don't like to pass. They haven't been. And I mean, I don't even know what if the Chargers get pushed, like, do they even pass that much? So now here's the thing. They're coming off the bye. Maybe, just maybe, they realize we should pass like a little bit more. I don't think that's likely. Now they're Broncos too.
No, I don't think you're gonna get this moment of self-reflection for Jim Harbaugh. It's like, my entire career, Greg Roman, my entire career has been based around running the ball, but I just had a week off. Fuck it, we're tossing the pigskin.
Now, you also don't have a great matchup against the Broncos too, right? Like, I think their pass defense is pretty for real. Now,
yeah,
I don't know if McConkey draws Surtain or not. That'd be interesting. I mean, because like if QJ draws Surtain, that actually seems kind of bullish to me. I just think you might end up with McConkey getting just everything he can handle in the limited pass attempts that they throw. Now, I'm spending all this time on Ladd McConkey because he goes undrafted in dog bowls, and the receivers that are going ahead of him are a little gross to me, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on this. And like, I'm just going to read some receivers, and I want you to tell me stop when I get to one where you would take Ladd McConkey over him. Okay?
Okay.
Amari Cooper. Rashid Shaheed. George Pickens. Dontavion Wicks. Jalen Tolbert.
Yeah, these are all guys that were like, I can see how they get there, but like I'm not crazy about them either.
Right. These are every one of these players, Devontae Adams, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Pittman, Rashad Bateman, all of them go ahead of Ladd McConkey. And like I don't know. I think that he's squarely in that tier of, I mean, like, shit, he's right next to Pickens on this chart. Like they're both in offenses that aren't passing very much. Like, and again, Ladd McConkey is not some like short yardage guy. Like, he can operate downfield too. Like he has skills. He's a 4.4 speed guy. Like, I kind of think that just like people played George Pickens and got there on the the big Justin Fields eruption week, I think you could do worse than last round Ladd McConkey pick this week on a heavy bye week. That's all I'm saying. That's all.
Yeah. So, and then the concern there is the volume, but it's not like that bad. Like, and Justin Herbert's expected points from passing is 11.6. Like, that's low, but it's not that bad. Like, Derek Carr is 12.2, Lamar. Jayden Daniels is 11.8, Josh Allen 11.7.
Yeah, you're listing all these guys here who I really am not wanting to play any of their receiver. Like, I don't want to play a Josh Allen receiver. I don't want to play a Jayden Daniels receiver outside of Terry McLaurin, who gets everything. Now, I guess you could say, well, Ladd McConkey is going to be the gets everything guy. I think that's
what you have to. That's what needs to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a bet I'm willing to make because the secret is still well kept on Ladd McConkey. This is one where you can be ahead of the field on this one. It's a bad matchup. Like, they're going to run the ball a bunch, but I just think I believe in the talent of the player enough to get there.
Yeah, makes sense for sure.
All right, let's move to this last chart. We'll take us home. Okay, there's really only two guys I had on this chart, and I've got notes on them. I can knock them out pretty quick, but I wanted to give you a chance. Was there anyone other than these two guys I've got in the show notes that you wanted to talk about here?
And no, nothing really stands. I mean, you're kind of still disappointed to see Keon Coleman still in this like really low route share.
It is progressing positively for him, though. You can see he's up to the 65% to 70% on the season now.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the week to week. So his most recent. Okay. So it's being knocked down by a 31% route share in week 3.
And that was
last
the week
2 weeks.
you'd be disciplined.
Yeah, the last 2 it's been 72%. So still not great on a low volume offense. And then just 15% target per route run in week 4, 19% in week 5. I think you have to be a little bit concerned about Keon Coleman.
Yeah, I would be concerned. The reason I'm not as concerned about Keon Coleman is that nothing is working for them in the passing game, so they have to try something. And
to try something, but he's their early receiver. So
yeah,
it's really weird that they're not getting him involved. It's really weird.
I think they're stupid as fuck. I think the Bills organization hit their head a few too many times because
why isn't Josh Allen targeting him more?
I don't know. It's not working. Like what you're trying isn't working. Like so, I think that it's one of those things where right now the Bills keep touching the stove. They're like, maybe if we just, what if we throw? I had a note. I don't think we hit this.
Oh, I know. This is the JSN root tree where it's or no, not the JSN root tree. Who's this George Pickens root tree from 2 years ago where all they're doing is throwing go routes.
Yeah.
It's just the same type of route. So like, yeah, I guess you do need that to be mixed up a bit.
But I had this note on Josh Allen. I think it adds good context to Keon Coleman. They have a 58% pass rate. That's the same as New England with Jacoby Brissett. The highest attempts that Josh Allen has on the season so far is 30. Last season, prior to firing their offensive coordinator and switching to Joe Brady, he only had 2 games lower than 30 pass attempts. So this like revert back to the Stone Age thing that they're trying isn't working. They've managed to win a couple games because Josh Allen will just do Superman things. But there's only so many times you can touch the stove and get burned and keep putting your hand on it. And I've got to think that as troglodytic as I believe that the Bills coaching staff is, that you can only burn your hands so many times before you realize, like, man, this isn't working anymore. So that's why I think, like, Keon Coleman in the short term, definitely agree with you. Like, it's going to take a little bit. But I think eventually when they figure their shit out, they might have to switch to using Keon Coleman a little more, passing the ball more.
You've got some probability there that it's just mismanagement and it's not per play.
I think it's a high probability of mismanagement. But okay, we'll hit these last 2 guys I had notes on. Okay, hear me out. We talked about the running back versus the Colts, but could I interest you in some DeAndre Hopkins against the Colts?
Does he still have his knee injury?
So, okay, I actually did some digging on this because there were some people that were floating the DeAndre Hopkins is going to get traded to the Chiefs nonsense, and
He's not getting traded.
Yeah, and I said that's not going to happen because this player cannot even pass a physical for the Chiefs right now because they're going to examine him and be like, yeah, we don't really want to sign you. We don't want to trade for you because you've torn your MCL. So you're not going to pass this physical, bud. Sorry. So I threw that out there, and I was informed that back in, I think it was week 3, DeAndre Hopkins came out and adamantly denied that his MCL was torn, which is very weird because DeAndre Hopkins is the one who gave the interview before the season that he tore his MCL. So I went back, I looked at the original story. DeAndre Hopkins the exact quote was that he tore his MCL and that these things take up to a year to heal and that he'd torn his MCL before. So he had experience with it. Sounded like a torn MCL to me. But then in week 3, he explicitly says he did not tear his MCL and that it was more like a sprain. He said it's more like an ankle sprain. So one of these 2 statements is clearly false, right? I don't know which one it is, but we have seen his route rate increase. From
increased to 57%.
Yes, but it's increased from the start of the season. So
Increased from 24% in week 1 to 57% in week 4. You're right.
Now, so you're not into the DeAndre Hopkins against the Colts thing.
It seems pretty thin.
Okay. More or less than the DeAndre Hopkins is getting traded to the Chiefs.
Oh, I mean, I think he has a much higher probability of scoring 20 points this week than getting traded to the Chiefs.
I think DeAndre Hopkins has a much higher chance of being the first NFL player on the moon than being traded to the Chiefs. All right, last guy. Are we doing the Juju thing? Is he just Diet Rashi?
You know, you see these vets come out and they have good games. Like, so he had what? He had a 4.5 yards per out run, a 28% target per out run. I can buy that he has this role now. I adamantly do not buy that it's gonna work very often.
That's a good assessment. Yeah.
That's what I think about it anyway. Like, he got cut. Didn't he get cut by the Patriots?
He did get cut by the Patriots. So
they were like, you know what? You're the worst receiver we have. Like, see ya, bud.
The Patriots decided Jason Booty, KJ Osborne, Kendrick Bourne on IR with a torn ACL. Like, all those guys were better than Juju. So.
And he didn't have like some. Okay, so they did owe him a big salary, but they're gonna have to pay him anyway.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think Juju is very good, but that's welcome to the Chiefs wide receiver room. You know, no one here is very good. There's Xavier Worthy, who is still getting the Andy Reid, like, well, he's a rookie, so we're going to bring him on slowly thing. Xavier Worthy is going to do the same thing that we saw from Rashee Rice last year, where it's like, oh my God, why aren't they using Rashee more? We're so frustrated. Then, like, by weeks 8 to 12, there's going to be signs of life. And then down the stretch, you're going to be really happy about Xavier Worthy. But it's like, I've seen this show before with Andy Reid, and
you know, I think the Xavier Worthy piece is a little bit different, because the issue with Rashee, it was like, oh, they're only playing him on 40% of snaps, but those 40% of snaps, he's getting like a 25% targets per out run, and then he looks incredible on it. So, Worthy he actually has a pretty solid route rate. Like, I think it's like in the 80%, but he's not getting targeted that much on it. And I mean, I bet the reason for that is that they literally just have him running go routes. So you need them to expand it rather than like play him more. They need to expand his route tree. And like that can happen with young players where they're like, yeah, we're just gonna ask you to do this one thing and that's it. Similar to Keon Coleman.
Yeah, and I think that's really good analysis, because it is different than the way the Rashee situation developed. I think there's a couple reasons why it's different. Number one, like they kind of needed that skill set from Worthy on the field. They needed that deep speed to be able to take the top off.
They probably still do.
They do. They also had, going into the season, the plan was very likely Rashee works the underneath stuff, Hollywood's kind of the intermediate guy, and Xavier Worthy takes the top off the defense. And Travis, you can chill. We won't pepper you with a ton of volume. We'll kind of save you till the playoffs. And then you and Rashee are both the dynamic duo underneath. You're the 2 option now. We kind of add you into the fold and ramp up your volume. We're seeing the plan have to change before our eyes. And so I guess what I'm saying is I just think over the season, the plan can change with Worthy, like you said, where they add more routes for him. Because one thing I've seen a lot of people get wrong about Xavier Worthy is I've seen a bunch of people say, oh, he's an incomplete prospect. He's a project. He's just a burner. It's like, don't talk about that if you don't know what you're talking about. You're telling on yourself that you never looked at his prospect profile. Because Xavier Worthy won at in all areas throughout
Right.
his, like, he did different things in each year of his college career. And he's the only player to get in the same echelon as Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors as far as his targets per route run. So, like, excuse me, his yards per route run in college. Like, he was the only one to get close to those two guys. And I believe he had a better yards per route run than them in, I want to say.
He had, I think at the time, he had the best freshman year of all time for a receiver.
And they changed
That's
how they
invested,
used.
but
Yeah, they changed how they used him over the course of his collegiate career as well, where there was a season where he was more of a deep ball guy. There was a season where he did a lot of short underneath schemed stuff. He had some intermediate passing in there as well. And then you also get the season where he has the broken hand. So a bunch of he has, issues with efficiency because he's not catching stuff because he's playing with a broken hand. And then you also have Quinn Ewers, so he's playing with a broken quarterback that can't actually throw the ball that's catchable. So, like, you get a guy who is a much more complete prospect than I think people realize. I just think that the breakout is, like, pretty clear to me, like, how it happens for the Chiefs. And so I think to bring this all back to are we doing the Juju thing, Juju kind of seems like a guy who, if there was someone who was going to lose work to a more talented player, Juju is here as a stopgap until they feel more confident that they can deploy Worthy in all quadrants of the field. And then you're really just asking yourself, like, well, is Juju going to be in losing snaps to Mecole Hardman so Mecole can run the deep clear out stuff? And then you're getting Worthy operating as more of, like, the secondary receiver behind Kelsey. But anyway,
so I stopped sharing just because I found this chart which shows, like, his, like, I guess it was this year, his target profile, where you see where it is on the field. You can see this is literally all over the field.
Yeah.
This is on StatsBomb. Thought that was interesting.
It's not, if you're trying to share it, it's not currently sharing.
Oh, I forgot to press that button. I wish I had, like, a better share view.
No,
you can see.
Yeah.
You can see it's all over the map.
Looks like a guy who operates in all quadrants.
And then it's also put next to. You can see it's put next to Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, interesting.
It is interesting. All right, I think that's it for us.
Yeah, I think we'll end on that note. If you managed to make it through the whole 2.5 hours with us, thank you. We appreciate you. I hope that we gave you some actionable info for this week. And to D-Rap, who took down his second dog bowl seat this last week and messaged me about how he appreciated us talking about Joe Burrow because we partially put him on to Joe Burrow last week. You're welcome. And also, I'm really sad because you continuously sniped me on all the Bengals stuff I was trying to do last week, and you won your second dog bowl seat. So congrats to you. Maybe save one for me this week. And we'll see you next week, everybody.
See you next week, everyone.